Hey, this is Jesse with Create This. So for this video, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be fabricating a drip cap for the top of this exterior trim piece. I recently had the garage door trim redone, and what I need is a piece that goes up here on the top, and it's kind of like a little roof. It sticks out a little bit, it's sloped to shed water, and it's going to have a bead cut in the bottom side of it so that when the water comes around the edge, rather than running down the face of the trim right here, it's going to drip. Okay, so 2 years ago, two Christmases ago, I did the drip cap on top of these windows. And you can maybe see a little bit of it up there. All right, filming this with my iPhone because I'm up on a ladder. We take a look at the thickness of this and the profile, gives you a good view of the profile. So it looks like the thickness is 5/8. That's at the back there. And then at the front, 3/8 thick. So ultimately, for the one over the garage, I feel like this ended up a little thin on the front. I think I'd like to see this be a 1/2 inch thick on the front. So probably what I'll do is I'll try to keep the same ratio between the two. But anyway, you can see here with this better view that this is sloped for sure, right? Like this is flat. That's a square 90-degree angle here, and that's definitely sloped. The stucco is sloped with the exact same angle on the back side. So that allows this to kind of just stay in place. I think they just brought the stucco down on top of it originally. And when I put it back in, I think I glued and pinned these two pieces together and kind of slid them up from the bottom so that they met that joint, and then I caulked. Okay, and while I'm up here, just getting an idea of the overhang. Looks like the overhang is roughly an inch. Might be an inch and a 1/16. And also the distance from the kerf there, the drip kerf, yeah, it looks like it's 3/8 away if you go from the center of it. Okay, and here we are at the top of the garage. Looks like the thickness there is, I'm kind of looking at this on my iPhone, it's a little bit more than 3/4 of an inch, but about 3/4 of an inch. So that's the thickness that will seat up on top of this top beam here. This is kind of what I came up with. This is not a to scale drawing. I'm just trying to play with the dimensions and get the angles that I want. So the old height of the front was 3/8 of an inch on the one that's over the dining room window, and it's a little hard to judge how tall the back was because I can't see it. I'm guessing that it's roughly 5/8 of an inch on the back for the old one. All right, so this is kind of interesting. I did find this photo that I made of the one that I was building over the dining room. So this is the top exterior trim board, and then this is the drip cap right here, and this is before I milled it. So if I zoom in here, it looks to me, based on where this ruler is meeting that piece of top exterior trim, it looks to me like this board was about 5/8 of an inch thick. So putting all of that together, doing a rise over run slope calculation, I think that comes out to somewhere between 8 and 9 degrees. So I know that I want about a 1/2 inch on the end, thickness wise. I think that that's going to translate to about 3/4 of an inch on the far end, thickness wise. So I measured the top of the exterior trim piece that it's going to be sitting on, and so that's about 3/4 of an inch thick. So that's going to be right here. And then I know that I want it to stick out about an inch beyond that. So you put those together, that's some pretty easy math, 1 3/4 inches. I am going to be using cedar for this project. That is one of the challenges of doing this. So cedar tends to be fairly rot resistant, and because this is going to be in constant contact with water and it's going to kind of function as a roof, cedar is a you know, in my opinion at least, a fairly decent material choice. This particular board, I've pre-cut it to be 11 and 2 inches long, so 11 feet, 2 inches long. The final length is going to be about 11 feet, but I made it a little bit longer so that I can cut off some waste and I can deal with, you know, any imperfections from planing and, you know, stuff like that. Width-wise, it's actually coming out to about 1 5/8 thick. So this is before I joint it, plane it, and rip it. I've already ripped it once just because there was a live edge on this side here and I needed to get rid of that before I did the jointing. I guess this would be thickness here. This dimension here, width is going to be almost 9 inches. It looks like it's 8 7/8. It looks like the steps that I'm going to perform to get this job done are going to be, I'm going to face joint the board probably on this side. I'm going to edge joint the board probably on this side or maybe this side, I don't know. I'm going to plane it, so this is a jointer here. I'm going to put it in the lunchbox planer. I'm going to rip the other edge of the board on the table saw. That gives you a very square board. It's parallel on all faces. So then I'm going to rip to thickness. I need to then rip the slope into the board, so I'm going to change the angle of the table saw and cut a slope into the board so that it sheds water like a roof. Final milling step is going to be to cut that water shedding kerf in the underside of the drip cap so that water comes over the edge, hits that kerf, and then falls down and drips. So that'll be done by lowering the depth of the saw blade on the table saw and just making a rip cut. I'll probably glue it to the existing trim board. So I might need to take off the trim board and clamp it and glue it. And then the final step would be to reinstall everything on the house and paint it and then have the stucco guy come out. So I'll try to do most of this video without much more talking. It's mostly just going to be machines, probably fast forwarded in places, maybe cut out, you know, whatever. So let's get started. Okay, for the first step, we're going to joint this board, and I'm not sure if it's going to show up in that lens or not, but it looks like this board is bowed a little bit, so this end and the far end both kind of point inward, just a tad on the ends. And it looks like the point of the bend is here and also down here. But I'm just gonna run it on the jointer with this side down toward the jointer, and hopefully that'll clean up the ends. Okay, so I don't know how many passes that is, 4 or 5, something like that. Pointing it up like this end down here bends this way ever so slightly. I'm not an expert at this, I'm actually really bad at it. I'm not sure why that happened, but I would call it poor technique, probably. You know, I think it's probably okay for my purposes. Looks like the thickness of the product is now 1 3/8. Okay, next step for me is going to be to edge joint this. So I've jointed this face now, and now I'm going to joint this face against the fence. So basically the board's gonna be in just this orientation. And so the purpose of this is to make these two faces square. So they'll be perfectly at a 90-degree angle. Okay, so this is what we end up with. There's a little blemish on this end. It's like maybe 1/4 of an inch deep, something like that. So I'm not gonna joint it any further down. I'll rip that to get rid of it at some point. I think those two edges are fairly straight. They're as square as they're gonna get anyway with the equipment that I have. The next step, now that we've got this surface and this surface jointed and at a 90-degree angle, square, now we're going to run it through the planer, and that will flatten and make parallel these two surfaces here. It's interesting. I'm seeing a bit of a bow at the end, pointed in that way, or maybe a kink, if you want to call it that. Looks like final dimension here, 1 2/8. 8 3/8 wide. All right, so the fence is set for 1 3/4 inches. So that's how wide I want the drip cap to be. Basically, it is crazy bowed. So it bows out this way, and it also bows out this way. Hopefully it'll be such a thin piece that when it is pin nailed and glued in place, it'll be okay, but I don't know what you're gonna do. Like, anytime you've got knots, like this knot right here is one of the issues. Anytime you've got knots, they tend to deform the piece, the work piece. It is what it is. I'll try to do the best I can. All right, so I clearly have screwed up my math. This is how I thought it would end up going. So this is a 1/2 inch out. This point down here is a 1/2 inch out from the side, from the bottom. And that is, I thought that would end up being an 8-degree angle, 8 or 9 degree angle, but this saw blade is actually at a 10-degree angle, and you can see that that's still not even close to steep enough for this. So, I don't know what I did screwing up the math, but I seem to have royally screwed it up pretty bad. I think that probably a 10-degree angle is enough to shed water. So I've got the fence set at, looks like 1 inch right now. So the blade is gonna start 1 inch out from the fence, and it's just gonna cut up. And I think there's gonna be a small flat spot right here at the top, and that's fine. I'm fine with that. I'm going to cut the drip kerf into it. I'm cutting it 3/8 of an inch from the outside, and I'm not cutting it very tall at all. Just a slight cut in the underside, maybe 1/8 of an inch, something like that. So it's bowed so far up that it's not contacting the blade right now. I think what I'll do for that is I'm just going to raise the blade up a little bit higher. So there's the kerf on the underside. So beside the horrible bowing that this piece is doing, this is my least favorite part of this piece. You know, this is pretty much guaranteed to fall out at some point in the future. When it falls out, it's not going to affect the kerf here, so it'll probably still shed water. It probably won't split, but it just won't look real great. But I'm dealing with what I've got, and this is what I've got. So I'm not real happy with this cedar stock. It's you know, kind of low end in my opinion, but at least it's cedar, I guess. Maybe that'll be a good thing. We'll see. Okay, so at this point, we're gonna clean up these ends here. We're gonna use the chop saw to do it. So I'm just gonna shave off a tiny bit of the end here. All right, nice clean end. So this is the drip cap on top. The drip cap's gonna be the same length as the exterior trim board. So in order to do that, I'm gonna make a knife line there. And a knife line right there. And then I will just transfer that knife line up. Okay, hopefully you can see that pretty well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this tooth up, and I just want it to kiss that line on the other side, because this side with my hand is the part that I want to keep. That looks pretty good to me. All right, so I guess we can consider this the dry fit before the glue up. There it is. Because it bends so much, it's gonna look like that when it's done. So not too bad, pretty sturdy. Again, we got an ugly knot right here, but I think it'll be okay. And if it won't, I'll just have to do it again. All right, so I'm gonna apply some glue. And normally, I would rub this back and forth a good bit to seat the glue. I suppose we can try that, but it's not going to work particularly well for this because it's so bowed. It's not going to get it in the places that we need. So I'm just going to start clamping right away. I'm going to start with the corners. All right, that's about as good as I'm going to be able to do, I think. Should be pretty even pressure all along. Even-ish. Not great, but even-ish. And by alternating, you know, lower and upper like this, you get a more even clamping force, but also what I like about these elevating the workpiece up with these red ones is that it gives me a better opportunity to feel the backside to make sure that the joint is flush. And in this case, you know, pretty much everywhere I placed one of these red ones, the joint was not flush. So definitely a good thing to be able to do that. So at this point, I think I just let it sit for about 24 hours, and I might pin nail it. I might take some nails and pin nail down from the top, or I might not if it seems like it's holding pretty well. Okay, so it's been a few days, and as you can see, I took the clamps off. If you sight down this, hopefully you can see this on camera. The end down there points off in this direction, so there's a bow in the board. Hopefully it'll still work. I don't know, I'm not super confident, but we're gonna try it. I'm gonna use ring shank nails, and hopefully that'll be enough force to clamp it to the wall. All right, now if you like gently let go, does it come down or is it okay? Perfect, it's okay. Okay, that's all I needed you for. Thank you, man. Actually seems like it's working. Just kind of grabbing the camera and putting it up here. There's our finished product. Pretty cool. That end too. And it seems like there's a little bit of a gap right here, but actually it's bottomed out on the stucco lip. So I think that's totally fine. So I'm gonna call a stucco guy, and he's gonna bring the stucco down on top of the drip cap here. And because it's at a slight angle, hopefully it'll shed water just fine. And so this section right here has that knot, and that's gonna be, you know, that's gonna be the biggest problem. But hopefully it'll still last for years. Hopefully I did a good enough job. All right, so hopefully you found this video interesting or useful. Again, I'm not a professional. I'm just a homeowner with some woodworking tools. I don't know what I'm doing. So if you see something that I could be doing better here, feel free to leave a comment down below. I do these videos mostly to learn and to have, you know, a document of like what procedure I went through, so that if I want to come back to it later and I want to do another window or another, you know, drip cap, I can remember what I did. But also so you can search it and, you know, you can find out what I did and maybe learn from the comments down below, things that I did wrong, and we can all kind of learn and grow together. So anyway, thanks for watching, and please subscribe.